And then the other thing too is when the roots come out from underneath the cube, then you know that it's really ready to transplant. Welcome to another episode of Farming Inside a Container Farm. Today on the Grow Guide, we're looking at growing cilantro. So we have our 10 by 20 tray right here that's ready to be transplanted. On this batch, we did 2 seeds per site, and so the density is quite higher, and therefore will help obviously with a revenue generation. So we're looking forward to adding that to our Grow Guide. So let's take the 10 by 20 tray here and move it towards the front so that we can transplant them into the system. All right, so I brought my 10 by 20 tray here. I got my replacement baskets, and then we are planting all of our herbs pretty much on the same location. So I got parsley right there, and I'm gonna be doing our cilantro right next to it. So I'm gonna start with my tray here and remove my tubes like that. So how do you know if it's ready to be transplanted from the nursery? Well, obviously time could be a thing. Oh, it actually smells really good. And then the other thing too is when the roots come out from underneath the cube, then you know that it's really ready to transplant. Ideally, you wouldn't want to wait for it to be this long, but we weren't 100% ready yet to transplant it into the main system. The beautiful part about having a dedicated nursery at the back of the container farm is that it allows the seedlings to be protected from the element, but also to act kind of like a buffer, so that if you're not totally ready to receive certain plants, you can kind of leave it there in a more slowed down, dormant state with lower light and no irrigation, and then when you're ready, you could transplant them, and then they're just going to explode once you transplant them. So looking forward to showing you guys that. So I have my first 3 cubes here. So what I'm going to do is take my tray, and then you have 2 options. Either you keep your plant site out blank like that, to use it somewhere else. The other option is to throw the cube right inside of it like so, and therefore you save having to do the dishes, so to speak, when it comes to the baskets. And the last way that we like to do, for multiple reasons here, but mostly is for algae mitigation, is to basically take a cube and put it into the baskets. Another advantage too is that if you put it in the baskets, then it's more stable and it's ready to stay for longer periods. So you may want to consider doing this for lettuce, for example, but things like parsley and cilantro or basil or even kale that are going to stay there for an extended period of time, you may want to use the baskets because you don't want to create algae issues for no reason, since they're going to be there for 6 to 8 weeks. So we're just going to go in the system here and repeat the process for the entire 10 by 20 tray. And once that's done, we're going to do a few tweaks on our lights, measure the intensity of it, and go from there. Okay, so we've done the whole transplant here into an entire tray. What's interesting with our container farms is that you can adjust the light. If you're interested in knowing more how that works, have a look at the bok choy video as well, where we go about measuring the light cycle. I know for a fact that for starters, I'm going to be at 60% on the knob right here. The light intensity on the lights that we're using here has a different peak, and then as we go down every 10%, obviously we're lowering the intensity of the light. And so for cilantro, we're looking for about 300 UMOs. But keep in mind that in the nursery, they are at about 75 to 100 UMOs. So if you were to transplant them directly under intense light, like 300 UMOs, 375, then you may stress them, and so you want to acclimatize them as much as possible by lowering it. So I know by experience from growing in the farm that 60% is that level. But how do I know that on a scientific level? Well, in a FarmAnywhere container farm, we have a PAR reader right here built in, and then you can get some wireless ones as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it right underneath the center of the canopy here. And normally the top here, you want it to be at the level of the canopy, but obviously they're so young now, they're actually going a little lower, but it's close enough for that. And then I have my reader right here. So I'm at 100% on zone A3, and that's a specific feature from FarmAnywhere containers where we can adjust the light per section. And so I'm getting 388 right now, and I will lower it. So let's just say 60%. At 60%, I'm getting exactly 200 ppfd. So what did I say earlier? The nursery is at about 100 ppfd. So I'm bringing them up to another 100 ppfd to help them get used to their new environment. And then in a few days, what I'm gonna do is slowly raise the light intensity to 80%, and that will give me 283 right now. So let's say, for example, I really wanna hit that 300. I'm just gonna adjust it here. It's probably in the 81%, there you go, almost 310, and I'm at 78% light intensity, and that will be just enough to give them what they need. Why don't you want to give them more light than they need? Well, if they cannot take that the photons and be able to process it, then it's wasted power on your side, and therefore it makes a big difference in terms of your efficiency at the end of the day. And therefore, by lowering the light and giving them exactly what they need, then you're making the best out of the watts, out of the power that you're paying for to be able to grow this. And that's things that a lot of vertical farms took for granted, that causes lots of issues that we're seeing right now in vertical farming industry. So we want to be as efficient as possible, not only in our movement as humans, in our rent, like using container farms, but also in our lights and how much lights we're using. When we're not using certain cycles, certain sections, we want to lower the light to the minimum, if not close it. And another thing too is if I bring this sensor right here, and then I go right up, so let's say the plants, they grow up, you see I'm still at 80%, but I'm hitting 400 ppfd right now because they're that close to the light, and that's also a waste. And therefore, as they grow, I'm going to want to adjust to stay within the 300 range, and therefore be even more efficient in my power. And that's the importance of making the best use of your power. So a little teaching moment as well too. If you're going to mix and match, let's say for example, parsley and coriander on the same section, well then in that case, obviously you're going to have to pick for the light intensity what you want to do. Do you want to, cater to the parsley, or do you want to cater to the cilantro first? Another option is here I space them at a 2-to-1 ratio so that it's easier to harvest. Also, we're not a commercial operation, and therefore we don't need to do higher plant density. This is really just for us to get data to share with you guys as to how much you should expect per plant site or per square meter. But in a commercial operation that you wanted to maybe have tighter density, you will want to have a 1-to-1 plant ratio, and therefore have a plant site like this, and across the board nice and even. So you have 2 seeds per site, and then you have the whole tray filled up completely, and therefore you're using 100% of the square footage. You got to think the light, if it hits empty spot, then it's wasted energy. So you want to be able to cater to the density as much as possible. We're coming out with another video on bigger plants soon. So subscribe to our channel and click the bell notification to see that, where we're actually doing a 4-to-1 planting ratio, which is quite a bit of space, but as they grow, they are capable of basically filling in the entire light cycle. So stay tuned for that. Write in the comment below if you think you know what we're growing that would take that much space in the farm. And so let's just switch it back here to a 2-to-1 plant spacing ratio, and that's it. What you can do is look at different grow lights, grow guides online, and see what kind of intensity you need for parsley or for the different things that you're growing. Usually it's between 200 and 400 UMOLs when it comes to anything that's leafy greens and herbs. And then as soon as you go into things that flower, like tomatoes and cucumbers, the light intensity goes up exponentially. Part of the reason why a lot of indoor farming operation don't do anything that requires fruiting, like tomatoes. They use greenhouses for that because of the light intensity required. So a little side note there to explain the science behind how we grow. And that's it. So we've transplanted 98 plant sites in the span of maybe 5 minutes max. It was extremely quick. And so we're just gonna let them there, leave them there. In about a week and a half or so, they should be ready for their first cut, and we're gonna be harvesting that for 6 to 8 weeks in a row, and just come again and be able to not only, it'll grow more, it'll grow faster. The more you cut, the more it grows, but there's also a technique for that. So subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell to know when that video comes out. We also have some amazing crops coming out next, new grow guides every single month that we're working on for you guys. So follow that. If you have any questions and comments, write them below. We'll do our best to answer them. Also follow us on Instagram, where we post day-to-day operations, the good, the bad, and the ugly that happens at FarmAnywhere in the manufacturing side, but also on the grow side. And we're coming out with some new exciting news too, as new services that we're offering to you guys in the indoor ag space. So definitely worth a follow on LinkedIn and Instagram. See you on the next video.